TJ. And thank you all for being here. I know some of you, I think this is a staff meeting, right? So you really didn't have a choice. You had to be here, but I appreciate that. I thank you. So yeah, as TJ said, I've done this presentation once before. I'm going to do it again next month for the CPRS conference down in Palm Springs. So I appreciate the opportunity to do it again for you all. I'm going to give you a quick agenda on what we're going to do here. So next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and kind of why I feel like I could be talking on this topic. Then we're going to get into some very serious things. All of these are keyed in with interviews. First, job descriptions. When you're looking for a job, it starts with a job description, and my experience tells me that and shows me that a lot of people don't know all the things that they should be looking in a job description and all the keys that are there and all the goodies and all the nuggets that help you with your application, and then your resume and your cover letter as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about interviews. There's a slight difference between when you're interviewing for a management position and when you're interviewing for a non-management position, so we'll talk about those as well. And then, of course, some of you who have been interviewing as of COVID, you've probably participated in an in-person versus a virtual interview. They are different, and there are things that you should know about being in one or the other and mistakes that are commonly made between those interviews. And then what do you do after an interview? There is a follow-up. There's some kind of nice protocol. What does that look like? What do I do, and how does that help me? And then finally, what do you learn from an interview? Because every single interview, you learn something. If you get the job, yeah, you've learned because you got the job. You did it right. But if you didn't get the job, there are always things you can learn from that. So, without further ado, that's me in my very first full-time job. Yeah, you can go ahead and laugh, because it was 2001. Hairstyles were different. Yes, they were different. I was thinner and younger and all of that. But this is to show you where I started my career. Started my career in 1993, and honestly, this half of the room is where my heart is. I hate to say that, sorry y'all. But I started as a volleyball coach and a track and field coach and a basketball coach for the city of South San Francisco. And I didn't even know that those were jobs when I graduated. This is when I graduated high school, 1993. I didn't even know that was a thing that the city hired for. I had played volleyball and I ran track in high school, and I was going to college, and I was playing volleyball in college. And I needed a job because college is expensive. So I applied for this part-time job in South San Francisco, and while I was working there, my boss said, hey, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I was 18. I was like, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And he said, well, you could work in this. You can do this for a real job. And I thought, well, actually, I kind of want to be a teacher, but hey, thanks, great, that's nice. I'm going to go to school to be a teacher. I'll keep doing this. You're paying well. That's fine, right? So I kept doing that. I also worked for the city of San Mateo in Belmont part-time, and that was in summer camp. That's when I started to expand out of sports. Again, as a rec employee, I'm sure, again, most of you know, once we got you, we start to give you more hours wherever we can, right? Oh, you like working open gym? Fantastic. Do you also want to do the special event in the hometown holiday? And can you come clean out the Butler building on Saturday? And can you do these other tasks, right? So I got asked to do lots of other things. So I was building my career without even really knowing it because I was still going to college to be a teacher. Then I graduate, and I start to look for a full-time job. And this is where I really started to learn about interviewing, applications, all of this stuff. Because I worked for Foster City for a few years. It took me a long time to get that job, and I'll tell you that story in a second. Then I went to San Ramon, Vacaville, and then here I am today in Pleasanton. And through this 30-plus year career, I have learned a ton. And it all started with Foster City. Trying to get the Foster City job, I had 9 interviews. And I did not know that I was learning something at the time from every single one of those interviews. First interview was with the city of Daly City. I had never done this before. I was applying for a rec coordinator job, and I had absolutely no idea what to look for in the application. I just saw that it was with kids, and I thought, I've been working with kids for years, part-time. I've been working in a city. I got this. I can nail this. No problem, right? I interview. I feel like it goes fine. I fill out the application. I felt like that went fine. Didn't ask any questions, didn't do any follow-up, didn't do anything. I get an email, I get a mail in the mail, because it was 1993. I get in the mail, I get a printout that says, thank you, but no thank you, you're number 2. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I didn't get the job. So I didn't, again, follow up. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't do anything. I just went on to the next interview. Then I went to Redwood City, interviewed there, and this is where I got my first wake-up call that I should have been asking questions. I'm in the interview. About halfway through the interview, he says to me, you know, you're great, but we've got somebody in-house, and you don't have all of the stuff that the in-house person has, so thank you, but no thank you. I didn't know at that time that I could ask questions. What else? What else am I lacking? What am I missing? What don't I have? I didn't do that. I didn't know. I just walked out of the room kind of scratching my head. It hurt me because I didn't know what to change for the next one. I went to Burlingame. Same situation in Burlingame. About halfway through the interview, they tell me, you're fantastic, but you know, we have somebody else for this job. Do you maybe want to work with seniors? And I went, are you, what? No, I applied for teens. Are you kidding me? I don't want to work with seniors. And they went, well, thank you. You can leave. And I didn't realize at the time that I should have seen the handout that they were giving me. They were offering me a job somewhere else. But I had one focus on youth and teens and didn't understand that they were seeing something in me that I didn't see, right? So again, didn't learn anything from that job. You can say that I was young, dense, naive, whatever it was. I really wasn't paying attention. Finally, have a couple more interviews. Honestly, I can't even tell you where they were. I know there were 9, because by the time I got to 9, it was Foster City. Foster City makes it very clear, they have a job in special events and they have a job in contract classes. And I'm thinking there's no way in the world I'm going to get either of these jobs because I don't have a lot of experience, but I'll try. I'm desperate, I'm broke, I'm in college. I'm living in my own apartment, barely making rent, working 3 jobs at this point, right? I need a full-time job. So I apply, I get all the way through the process. Again, I'm thinking things are going well, and they tell me at the end, Michelle, we have 2 jobs, 3 people, you're number 3. Thank you, but no thank you. And I walked out the door, and at that point I said, I'm not going to work in rec. 9 times, I'm done. I don't get this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I move on. I keep preschool teaching. I keep doing other things. I gave up. 6 months later, I get a phone call from Foster City, and they tell me, we have a job in seniors. What? but I had started to learn things. At this point, I went, okay, somebody's trying to tell me something. Maybe I need to go talk. And they literally were like, just come talk to the director. So I go sit down and talk to the director, and he tells me, this is going to sound horrible, Michelle, but you worked with preschool kids. I said, yeah. And he said, I have a job in seniors. I said, yeah. And he goes, they're exactly the same. And I went, okay, sure. And he said, think about it. In preschool, they're getting their basic needs met. They're making friends. They feel safe. They're going to a place every day where they're looking forward to going to it. In a senior center, they're making friends. They're getting their basic needs met. They're going to a place where they feel safe every single day. You are qualified. Had I asked these questions when Burlingame offered me a senior center job, like, why do you want me for a senior center? I would have had a job 2 years earlier. But I didn't ask the right questions. So this is why I tell you this story, because there is so much to learn from every single interview that you have, that I don't want anybody to spend the time that I spent, do 9 interviews, and do everything you can wrong. So I've also sat on hundreds by now of interview panels. One for me applying for the job, right? 9 times for just the first job, and then many, many more since then. I've sat for the city of Pleasanton, where I've interviewed some of you in this room, and then I have sat for other cities, and again, interviewed some of you in other cities, and seen you in other cities, and interview other people in other cities. So I have experience from going through the process and seeing the back end of the process. All reasons why I have put all this information together to help you guys. So let's get into the meat of it, right? So first, this is a job description. This is literally the same job description for a job in Brentwood. They look different, right? So what am I looking for here? What's important to look for, and how does the job description relate to my application? These are 2 things you should always ask yourself when you are looking for a job and you find the job description. I'm going to talk specifically about recreation jobs, but I know a lot of my presentation will also help you in other jobs, like you're going to apply for Target or a college or something else. But specifically this portion about applications is around recreation. So in recreation, we almost always, every city has a job description that looks like this. It's incredibly generic, incredibly bland. We do that on purpose because we have to keep a job generic and non-specialized because we use it over and over and over again, and we have supervisors that are in certain areas and managers that are in certain areas, but we have one job description for manager and one job description for supervisors, and the same thing for coordinators, right? So unfortunately, when you're looking at a supervisor or coordinator job description like this, you can't read it, unfortunately, but it says like your job could be in sports. It could be with contract classes. That doesn't help. When I'm looking for a job in youth and teens or sports, I don't know what this job is. So this job description, in my opinion, horrible. Not a good one. You have to also go to places like Indeed, LinkedIn, anywhere else that you can find job descriptions written, because this one, same job, has all the meat and potatoes. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I don't know, but a lot of cities do this. They post a secondary job description somewhere else that gives all the details. Now you can start to see the job is this job, significant portion of the recreation programs for our senior center, public art program, and contracted classes. Wow, okay, I finally understand what this job is for. Great. Now I begin the process of asking myself, do I have experience, education, or transferable skills? If I have any of those three things, and trust me, everybody in this room has education, experience, or transferable skills for these jobs, senior center, public art, and contract classes. You just don't think you do. And I'll get to that in a second. So if you can say, I have one of those three things, I have all of those three things, then you move on to digging in deeper into the job description. Actually, yeah, I'm going to go to this next one. So the next part of the job description usually gets into duties and responsibilities. This is probably the most important part of the job description that people miss. I've literally, as the writer of this job description, I've literally written your application for you. Now think of it that way. This is my application written out for me. You know why? Because I've told you, I need somebody who can coordinate, participate, identify, recruit, direct. It's all verbs, right? This is what I need you to do. When you read this, if you say to yourself, wow, yeah, I have experience, education, or transferable skills coordinating, organizing staff, operational activities, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I have education, experience, and transferable skills doing those things. Great. I meet that first one. What's the next one? Participate in development, implementation of goals, objectives, policies. Ooh, I don't know. Do I have that? I don't know. Let me keep reading. Let me see. Identifies opportunities for improving service delivery. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Let me keep reading, right? So you read all of these. And when you find that you have a good portion, you don't have to have all of them. It's better if you have more than one that you can say, I have experience, education, or transferable skills around. But when you read these, ones that you can speak about, ones that you can say something about, you want to take these and put them on your application exactly as they are. And I'll tell you why in a second. So this is a standard application. This is from CalOps. We use NeoGov, but cities seem to go between CalOps or NeoGov. That's the electronic system that you would apply through, right? So when you've filled out your name and your address and everything, then you get down to your first job, and you write things like, what company am I working for, the address, what's my title. This is your current job, right? My 40 hours a week, the start year, if I'm still there, that kind of thing. I'll get to the reason for leaving in a second. But then this is where you are almost verbatim copying what's in the job description. Remember when I said those verbs and those verbs that I can say I have experience, education, or transferable skills in? If you've got experience or education, you are writing them right here. So for this one, let me go back real quick. Oops, wrong way. This very first one said coordinate and participate, right? And then identify, recruit. To make it easy on the person who's reading these applications, write your job description in the exact same order. Write your skills in the exact same order, because I know that job description. I'm reading your application. I don't want to read 45 bullet points only to find that you have finally started to say what I'm looking for. Make it easy on me. Make it easy on the people who you are trying to get hired by, okay? So if participate was my first bullet that you could speak about, write it first. And write it in a way that speaks exactly to what I'm looking for. You don't have to write me a paragraph. You can say, I participate in budgeting. Fantastic. I know that you can do that now because you're telling me you can do that. You don't have to say, I've participated in budgeting and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Some people think they've got to give me 45 paragraphs. That's what the interview is for, right? That's later. That's what your cover letter, that's what your resume, more details come out in those places. Here, you want to be brief and you want to be quick. So, and I'll tell you why in a second. Hold that nugget too. But before I move on, reason for leaving. Fatal flaw number 1 on your application. I'm leaving this job because my boss is horrible. Don't ever write that on your job application. I left because I don't like the people I work with. Don't ever write that on your application. You may think, nobody would ever write that. I can't tell you how many applications I have read where somebody felt, I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. I hate those people. Those people hate me. I don't ever want to work there. My boss was an idiot. Don't say those things, even if it's true, even if it's exactly why you left. Because unfortunately, when you write things like that on your job application, it tells me more about you than it does about the situation you left. It tells me maybe you don't get along with people. It tells me maybe you don't like people. It tells me maybe you're just hard to get along with, right? None of those things may be true about you, but when you come out with a negative statement on your job application, it tells me something negative about you. So you want to write something positive. I hated those people, but what I'm going to write is, I left because I was seeking professional growth opportunities. I left because I was going to die in that organization, and if I didn't leave, they were going to kill me or I was going to kill someone. So I left because I was seeking professional growth opportunities. So please, when you are talking about why you left a job, always put it positive, okay? So the next portion of the application, not every job application has both of these areas, additional experience or special skills. Cal Ops does. This is where you tie in your transferable skills. And this is why I say every single person in this room could work in a senior center with public art or contract classes for this job. And people don't think about it, people don't realize it. How many of you have ever babysat a kid? You already have supervision. Even if you've never supervised another staff, you have supervised children. You have been a supervisor. How many have their own checking account or savings account? You have already done budgeting, okay? You don't think of it this way because no one's ever paid you to do your own checking account, right? No one's ever paid you to do your own budgeting, but when you break it down into these transferable skills, every single person in this room has dealt with budget in one way. If you've babysat, you have supervised. If you have dog walked or taken care of an animal, you have supervision of other things. If you have a little brother that you had to babysit, if you have volunteered for your church, if you have worked at your family business, these are, and didn't get paid for it, right? People think because I didn't get paid, it's not a job. Because no one hired me to do it, it's not a job. And all of that is wrong. You are getting skills from every single one of those places and things that you should be writing under additional experience and special skills. So for this job, they were asking about this Brentwood job. They were asking about public art, senior centers, and contract classes. They also asked about being a liaison to a school and being on a committee. Well, maybe you'd never worked a job where you were on a got part of a committee or managed a committee, but again, you like in school were part of a club or a committee. You should be writing those things here. I've served as a community member, committee member for a nearby school district. I did budgeting for my church, right? That's not what this job was asking for in the job description as far as a church or, you know, if you were ever on one of these boards. But you're telling me by doing these two areas that you have paid attention to all the details of the job description and you are trying to show me all of you. And that's so important to a hiring manager. When you just tell me, I don't have anything else, I barely know what a budget is, I'm not going to look beyond your application, to be quite frank, and you're not going to get an interview. And that is why it is so crucially important that you fill out as much information as you can about on an application. A lot of the times you're also asked to put in a resume, right? Sometimes it's optional. This is the area where you give even more detail about yourself, and there are tons of trends around resumes, right? I'm not going to tell you that your resume should be one page. I'm not going to tell you that it should be on colored paper, that it should smell like flowers. Those are all things that have been trends over resumes. Those are also all things that when you go to apply and somebody says, give me a resume, that you can Google. What's right now? What is the current trend for a resume? Is it one page? Is it double-spaced? Is it in a column? What is it? Does it have my picture on it? Those are all things that you can Google. But the trends that are sticking, the trends that you should be thinking about in a resume where you can talk more about yourself is skill-focused and hard skills and soft skills, right? So if you're looking for a non-management job, that's where I'm talking about budgeting and programming and supervision. This is where, again, you should, on your resume, be talking about more detail of, yeah, I actually was a babysitter since I was 12, and that says a lot. Somebody put me in charge at 12, right? That's huge. Somebody trusted me with their kids, and this is for real. I really was a babysitter at 12. Looking back, I'm thinking, you people were crazy. You put me in charge of your cats and dogs and children at 12. But they trusted me, right? That's huge. That tells me I think there's something in this person that I can put out on a sport field, I can put out in the library, I can put out at a front counter by themselves, and they're going to be amazing, right? So tell me your hard skills and give me more detail. If your soft skills for management, right? Some of the soft skills that are currently being sought after, and this is all because of COVID and how we all had to pivot really quick and figure things out. What's happening with COVID? How are we going to run offices? What are we going to do? So these words should not be a surprise. Adaptability, innovation, integrity, and strategic thinking. These are all things that also apply for non-management jobs, but they are crucial in management jobs. So if you're a strategic thinker, and you know you are, if you're adaptable, you can also be putting those on non-management applications. Because again, I could be looking at you going, you're going to be a fantastic coordinator, but someday you're also going to be an amazing supervisor and an amazing manager, and maybe one day come get my job, right? My whole goal as an assistant director is to hire people who are going to take my job someday. I got 3 years left in this profession. I am looking for who may take my job next. Might be sitting in the back of the room right there. I don't know. Yeah, turn around and look, yeah. That's always my goal. That's always a hiring manager's goal. You need to sell yourself so well without being too cocky that you are going to someday, for you people, take Jack's job or TJ's job or even Connor's job, right? That's your goal. You want to sell yourself so well. So tell me right now, I'm adaptable. I know how to do budgets. I was babysitting since I was 12, right? This is the place that you want to spell this all out for us. Deeper details. Crucial, this next one. For you part-timers, you may not know, but the city of Pleasanton does a very thorough background check when you apply for a full-time job. And when I say thorough, I mean I'm looking at your online, I'm not. The police investigator who is hired to do the investigation is looking at your online presence, your bank accounts, your DMV records, talking to your neighbors. When I was applying for this job, I lived in a condo, and there were people above me and people below me. And I heard the investigator walking up the stairs and asking my neighbor, who, by the way, I did not get along with. She was wretched, and I was so worried that she was going to say nasty things about me and cost me my job. So be nice to your neighbors. Clean up your DMV, but clean up your online presence. Make sure that when I go to Snapchat and I'm looking you up, that I'm not seeing pictures of you with paraphernalia, right? Make sure that I'm not seeing too sexy, provocative photos, right? These are things that we aren't thinking about when we're going for a job. We're just posting on social media. Sometimes we don't even know that somebody posted them on social media about us, right? Because we're at a party and our friend did it. But check out your online presence. Every single person in this room should have a Google alert for their name. I do. And every now and then I get something that pops up, and it's usually because some news reporter interviewed me or whatever. But sometimes it's been a surprise, like, oh, why is there a Google alert piping up about me, right? There is someone with my same exact name who lives in Italy, and every now and then she does something, and I get a Google alert, and it's all in Italian. And I'm so intrigued. I want to know what this person's doing. I can't read it, though, because I don't speak Italian. But you should all be looking at your online presence every day, and most importantly, when you are applying for a job. Clean it up before you apply for the job. Make your resume specific to the job. This is another crucial problem that I see. People are applying for multiple places, and they write, I really want to work at Carl's Jr. And then they turn that resume in to the city of Pleasanton. And I get your resume, and I read it, and I say, wow, he really wants to work at Carl's Jr. It's great. I hope he gets that job next. You know why? Because I just saw that you are not detail-oriented, right? Don't do that. It takes 2 seconds to go back through your resume and make it specific to the job you are applying for. Share self-employment, freelance work, volunteer, and other personal pursuits to develop new skills. So if you had a paper route, I don't even know if they still do that. I might be aging myself. If you have done some sort of self-employment, there's a kid that lives down the street from me. He's in high school. He's got a sign out his front yard for some car washing business that is his own personal business. He will wash your car for you, right? Good for him. That's awesome. Write that. It may have absolutely nothing to do with this job. But again, I see that you're motivated, you're self-supplying, self-employed, you're self-doing things that, again, tell me more about you. So don't forget these things. Next, cover letters. Really quickly, cover letters are mostly around manager jobs. This is a cover letter that I actually used for a director job that I didn't get. But it's an example here to show you kind of the 12 things that you should be doing around cover letters. Now, for non-management jobs, cover letters can be optional. I would recommend you write one because, again, it's an opportunity for you to tell me about yourself. When you write one, write a new cover letter for each application. I have redacted spots that are specific to the city I was applying for and the job I was applying for. I have made the mistake where I've pulled up the cover letter from the last job and forgot to change these things and submitted it and went, well, that's why I didn't get that job, because they saw that I was also trying to get the job in Piedmont, right? They don't want me because I'm not detail-oriented. So write a new one and make it specific for every job. Address the hiring manager by name if you know them. I knew this person. She was a recruiter, Ms. Hurtado. Follow the instructions. Sometimes the job tells you, I want a cover letter. I want 400 words. I want it single-spaced. I want the margins to be specific. Do that. Don't think that they're not going to pay attention to that. They will. Highlight specific relevant skills when they tell you. This job in particular, they wanted somebody who knew something about aquatics. They wanted somebody who knew something about recreation software. And they wanted somebody who knew something about performing arts theaters. So I have 3 paragraphs here where I talked about every one of those things, told them about my experience. I also wrote it on my application, and I wrote it in my resume. But this was another place to write more about me, right? Use simple and affirmative language. Use legible font. Speak about the organization. This is where I said city of, right? I was talking about them specifically. Don't mention what you lack. This is another fatal flaw. A lot of people think, well, I've never budgeted before, and I need to tell them that. You can say that without saying, I've never done a budget before. You can say, I've done budgeting. I have personal experience with budgeting. and leave it at that. That tells me, okay, you may have not done a $500,000 budget before. That's okay. You have personal experience. But when you say it in the negative, again, like the leaving the job, don't say it in the negative. When you don't have the experience or the transferable skills or the education, say it in a positive way that you can say it. If you can't say positive about it at all, like I don't even have a checking account, Michelle. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done budgeting. Don't say it at all. If in an interview they ask you a question and they say, tell us about your budgeting experience, that's when you can turn it into the positive. I almost started. See, I want to do what you all do too. I don't. I have very limited budget experience. Or I would love to learn more about budgeting. You're not saying you don't have it. You're not saying something negative. You're saying it in a positive way. We're going to get to a point in a minute where you guys are going to practice at your tables. I know you can all audibly groan right now. That happens every single time. But that's an opportunity. Everyone should be practicing interviews. And when you practice is an opportunity where you can ask the people you're practicing with, I've never done budgets. I know this is going to come up. How do I answer this? And then you can mock an interview, and they can ask you a mock interview question, and you can try an answer out on them and then get feedback. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you feel with interviews. So limit your content. Michelle wrote about 380 words here. Probably why I didn't get the job. I don't know. But 300 to 350, right? Again, as a hiring manager, I probably have to read 20, 30 at this level of these. I don't have time, right? So when you write me 6 pages, I don't have time. Keep it to 350 words. End your letter with a call to action. I wrote here, thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to discussing the position with you soon. I'm excited. I want that to come across. I want you to call me. I'm not doing this just because I need money. I'm doing this because I really want to work here, and I really feel like I am the person that you should hire. Convey that. Please call me, right? Check for spelling and grammar. Oh my goodness, have somebody else read this as well. I probably read this 12 times. And then I gave it to my 14-year-old son, who of course thinks he knows more than mom, and he's smarter than mom, so he can find all of mom's errors, and sure enough, he found an error. And then to this day, he still hasn't let me live it down. I wrote that, 2021. He still reminds me. Remember when I was looking at your yes, I remember. Yeah, thanks, right? Ask for a proofread, okay? Next, all of this, everything I'm telling you about looking at the job description, filling out your application with the same order and flow as the job description, filling out your cover letter with as much information as you can about yourself and your resume about yourself. All of this is important because of this. When you apply for a coordinator job, there are today anywhere from 100 to 150 people who are also applying. And that relates to about 10 to 30 seconds of initial application review. 10 to 30 seconds you have to sell yourself, okay? So people always use this word, elevator speech, right? Because you have 10 to 30 seconds sometimes in an elevator. Think about it. If I'm going to walk into an elevator and have to tell somebody in 30 seconds about myself so that they walk off that elevator and never forget me, what am I going to say? If you think about that going into an application, what am I going to put in the very first box of the application so that you remember me? I sit there with HR. Any hiring manager will sit with HR, and they will look at every application. And this is how it goes typically. Okay, name. Okay, that's the school they went to. Great. Okay, what's the first job? Okay, they worked for Pleasanton. Fantastic. Okay, what did they do? I don't know. I can't really tell. They didn't really, they said they worked in sports. Okay, what's the next job? Oh, they worked at Target. Okay, what did they do? Stocking shelves. Okay. Okay, next job? Is there a resume? Is there a cover letter? No? Okay, next application. Done. If you wanted that job, you didn't convey it. I don't know. HR is even more brutal than I am. I am desperately trying to find information about you, but because HR looks at every single job application for every single job in a city, they do not have time. They don't have time, and they move very quickly. So as much as you wanted that job, you don't even have a shot because you didn't fill out the application in the best way. So when you put participate, coordinate, all of that in the same order right up at the front, I immediately see, oh, work for Pleasanton. Great, they have budgeting. Great, they worked in a senior center. Oh my gosh, they have public art. Put them in the pile we're interviewing. I don't even need to look at anything else, even if you have a cover letter or resume, because you already told me just in the very first box. You nailed your elevator speech to me, okay? I cannot stress this enough. I've talked to so many people over the years who are like, I don't even know why I didn't get an interview. And that's why you didn't get an interview, because you didn't convey yourself in the application properly, okay? Next, here's the fun part, interviews. Now, I'll give you a second to read these. You will think that these are just funny. Unfortunately, they are also true, right? Especially the one in the middle. I've done this 1,000 times. I don't always think of the perfect answer, but when I do, it's right after I left the interview, right? It's in the car driving home, right? So why do you want this job? I've always felt passionately about not starving to death. Yes, like I told you, my first job I needed, was that Mark laughing? I was like, wait a minute. I told you my first job, I was starving as a college student. I can't say that in an interview, though, right? You can't say that. And again, I think all of these are just honesty, at least these two on the end. I'm just honest. This one, I'm nervous, right? I'm not listening. My listening skills are gone, right? So what do you see? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? My biggest weakness is listening. Yeah, you didn't listen to the question because I'm nervous, right? So how do I get over these things? What do I do next? We watch this video first. Mike, I think you're going to need to touch the screen right in the middle of the video. Yeah.
An interview or break an opportunity. So to help you really prepare, we're going to dissect and analyze an entire interview from start to finish. I'll be sprinkling in a mix of tips about body language, etiquette, and how to answer common questions. Like, when exactly does the interview start? How do you deal with nerves? And how soon can you follow up? For years, athletes have used science and data analysis to improve. Now, we are doing the same for job seekers everywhere. This is Job Science. Meet Anya, a recent grad majoring in business administration. She's interviewing for an entry-level project management position. Note her posture. Head up, shoulders pulled back, no slouching, and no laid backness. The interview begins the minute you walk into the building. Anya treats everyone in the office with respect while keeping eye contact. From security personnel to receptionists, anyone you run into on your way in could be asked to give feedback on you. It's normal to be nervous. When nerves kick in, the natural human response is to take short breaths and breathe faster. Stay calm by taking a deep breath before entering. Hold it, count to 3, and then slowly breathe out. Pause. First, ace those introductions. Greet everyone in a way that is authentic to you, like, hey, nice to meet you, and then say their name. That one always works. You know, you're more likely to remember their name if you say it out loud when you first meet. A lot of the time, small talk comes up before any questions. It's good to have a few current events or topics in mind. You can't possibly predict what they're gonna ask, but you can practice answering the common ones, like, why do you wanna work here? What makes you unique? Let's see what our interviewer asks.
So I wanna hear more. Tell me a little about your experience and what you'd bring to this role.
Pause. When this is asked, they're looking to learn what makes you stand out. Be honest with your answers. That means having to pause and think for a second. That is all right. Think about your past experiences and how the role lines up with your future goals. It never hurts to be honest.
Great question. Ever since I was young, I've always been the organized one in my family. Whether it was helping my parents schedule vacations or color coordinating my closet, naturally that lifestyle got me here, project management. I've been a people person for as long as I can remember. Plain and simple, I love team building and making sure everyone has a part. Just the other month,
Ooh, just really quick, don't speak negatively about previous places you've worked. Instead, talk about what you've learned.
I helped lead a team of 5 to deliver a 3-week sales project a few days ahead of schedule. I'd love to bring these things here.
Perfect. A response like this not only answers the question, but also shows off her personality. But remember, there's no one right way to interview and answer questions. Be yourself and let your personality shine. Be aware of your movements. Practice polite, confident body language. Subtly miming your interviewer's posture can actually create a sense of connection. Of all places, unnecessary movements are hard to ignore in an interview. Whether it's tapping your fingers or bouncing your leg, be aware and stay present.
Hey, it's been great chatting so far. I guess my last question is, do you have any questions for me?
Ooh, this is a hot one. Make sure to have a short list of questions for your employer in your back pocket. Ask the questions you would if you got the job. If tomorrow was your first day, what would you want to know from the manager? Even if you don't have any burning questions, asking a few shows that you did your homework and that you really care. Some include, what do you like best about working here? What are some mistakes people have made in this position? What is a goal you're currently working toward? How will my performance be evaluated?
Well, I did read that you're expanding your software team next quarter. I'm curious how you plan to carry that out.
The interview isn't actually over. Always follow up within 24 hours with a thank you email to the hiring manager. This can be a quick note simply thanking them for their time, or a longer one that elaborates on some of the things you talked about. It's key to leaving a lasting impression. This was the breakdown of an interview. Till next time.
Can you advance? Yeah. Thank you. Oh, you know what? Go back and hit stop. There we go. Okay, the music wasn't going to stop. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So really quickly, an overview of what was brought up in that video, because there was a lot. All of it was really good nuggets, right? Remember, the interview starts the moment you walk in the door. You may not realize, but every job in recreation that you walk into, that front counter person is the person who's tracking. Oh, Connor? You're Connor? Oh, you're next on the list. Great. Have a seat, Connor. Thank you. And I'm watching you, Connor. And if you sit down and pick your nose, I'm going to let them know that, right? So you're being watched. You may not realize that, but you are. And a lot of the times, the hiring group will go back and ask, hey, front counter staff, were they nice to you? Did you like them? Were they appropriate? Did they get on the phone and talk really loudly and interrupt your work, right? You may not be thinking that, but all of that is being watched. So remember, walk in professionally, be respectful, do all of these things that you want to do to impress that person. Be kind to everyone you meet. At introductions, repeat the interviewer's name. I am horrible at remembering people's names, and I have to say, nice to meet you, Connor. And then even then, sometimes I walk out and I'm like, was that Kevin or Kyle? What was his name? Yeah, so do what you can to say their name and remember it. Pausing when questions are asked is totally okay. I think some people feel that they get flustered, right? And I can't pause. I can't ask for the question to be repeated. That's not okay. It's totally okay. It also buys you more time to think about an answer, right? So tell me about your budgeting. So I used to work for the city of Foster City, right? I don't have to jump right in and answer. I can pause. I can take a breath. There's a lot of questions that are grouped together like in 4 bunches. Tell me about your budgeting and how much money you've budgeted, and if there were any problems with that budgeting, and any time you've ever had great experience with raising revenue. Sure. I want to make sure I get all parts of that question answered properly. Can you repeat the first question, the first part again for me? And break it down in sections. And then as you start to answer the first part, I know there was a second part. Can you please repeat that second part for me? Can you please repeat that third part for me? All of that's okay. Don't think that you're dinging yourself. Don't get flustered by it. Take a moment, take a heartbeat, pause, and then let yourself think, right? Watch the length of your answer. Read the interviewer. I will give you clues, right? First question in an interview is almost always, Tell me why you're qualified for this job. Tell me why you think you should get this job. Tell me about your experience, right? I also, before I even get into that, tell you, hi, nice to meet you. We have 10 questions and 30 minutes. That is your clue. 10 questions, 30 minutes. When you start that first question, well, actually, I started working when I was 9, and then when I was 10, and then when I was 11, and then when I was 12, and then when I was 13, and yes, I want to know about you, but I don't want to know 15 minutes later, and you're still answering the first question. As an interviewer, as an interview panel, we're going to be focused, and the longer you talk, the more unfocused I'm going to get. Read that, right? Like I can tell the yawns, right? I can see some of you looking around. I can see some of you tired and bored. I know that, right? I'm trying to advance. I'm trying to move on. You should be doing those same things in your interview. Don't waste 15 minutes, 10 minutes, anything like that talking about yourself. That's the easiest question for people to talk about, and we put it first because we want to make you feel comfortable. But interviews are ruined because you don't realize how much you've talked about yourself, okay? Speak positively about that previous employer, like we talked about. Follow-up emails. So they do leave a great impression. Keep them short and focus just on the hiring manager. When I have sat for other cities, when I have sat for, I've sat for our fire department multiple times. Some of the most fascinating interviews I've ever sat on. Talk about the most nervous people I've ever met in my life. Firefighters are the most nervous people interviewing for jobs. Sweating profusely, shaking, scared to death. It makes me sad. I want to hug them because they're so nervous, right? But they're incredibly polite, and when they walk out, they, thank you, Miss Michelle. Thank you, I appreciate it. And then they go back and they send me an email. It's nice, but by the time they've gotten home and sent me an email, I've already told the hiring manager my opinion about them. So now that you've sent me an email and told me more stuff or thanked me, I can't change any answer. I have no more control. But if I am the hiring manager and you are sending me an email and I've got all this feedback already and you've sent me an email, it's another reminder or it's another clue to you. I have control over hiring you. You have shown me another thing about you. It also shows me a thing about you when you don't send me an email. So send them, keep them short, and focus on the hiring manager. They can literally be just, thank you so much. I appreciated the opportunity. I look forward to talking to you more about it. Please feel free to call me if you have any other questions. No one really does call you again unless we're calling you about the job, right? But it's nice to know that you are so excited about getting this job that you're willing to talk some more, right? Always, always, always ask questions at the end of the interview. So, what questions can I ask, right? That's always a fun one, because some people just go, well, yeah, do you have any questions? Yes. When will I hear from you again? I mean, that's a fair question. It is a fair question, but I'm about to tell you the next steps anyway. So you don't need to ask me that question. What you should be doing is taking this opportunity to tell me more about you. And so these questions are just examples of things that you can ask me, and then I give you an answer, and then you use that answer to tell me even more. For instance, I see you have a strategic plan. Can you tell me how the diversity and equity goal is being implemented? And I say, oh yes, we're forming a diversity and equity committee. We're hoping to get it started in February of 2024. And you say, that's fantastic. I'm so excited to hear that because when I was in college, I was part of a diversity and equity club. I have a ton of experience with that, and I would love to be part of this committee if I am chosen for this job. That didn't come up in the interview. I had no idea, but you gave me another nugget about yourself. You left me another little piece of you that reminds me and tells me how great you are. And maybe, even though I didn't ask you any questions about the Diversity and Equity Committee in the interview, that may be the thing that I absolutely need, and no one else said it, and you just got the job because of it, right? So use questions like this. What are the most immediate projects that are being addressed? and I just randomly say, well, we're renovating the firehouse, and we'll be taking seats out, and I know, we'll be taking seats out and putting it into this cabaret style, and we've never done it before. And you say, well, that's fantastic. When I was in college, I was part of theater, and we transformed our theater to cabaret style all the time. You may be going for a sports job, but again, now you've told me this other little nugget about yourself. Transferable skills, right? All about transferable skills. These things are going to be the things that put you over the top. So any moment that you get an opportunity to tell me more about yourself, and the end of an interview is always another opportunity for you to tell me about yourself, right? Utilize it. All right, one more video. Virtual interviews are different. So let's watch this one. This is short. This is like a minute and a half.
Make the most of your prep time by filming yourself. Now, the phone on your camera works perfectly for this exercise. Imagine that the camera lens is the interviewer. Speak directly to the light or to the lens to mimic eye contact. When you're done, you want to review the footage for body language. Notice if you're smiling. Try to project your voice while speaking clearly and slowly. See if you're sitting up straight without fidgeting or using any distracting hand gestures. Length of your answer. Check how long it took you to respond. You want to aim between 1 to 2 minutes. If you're taking less time than that, you might need to highlight an additional qualification or even an achievement. Or maybe you just need to speak a little bit slower. Technical issues. If your interview is virtual, this exercise allows you to check your tech, including your camera, mic, and internet connection, and also try to have your resume on hand so you can refer to it if needed. If you don't have access to a camera on your phone or computer, don't worry about it. Just practice with a friend. Find someone you feel comfortable with and someone who's going to be able to give you honest feedback.
You could hit stop again and then go to the next screen. Thank you. Okay, some quick tips, reminders from that video, right? Distractions. Her background behind her was completely white, right? This is a personal opinion, I don't like, it drives me crazy, the blurring of a background. I know why people do it, because they want to remove distractions, but the blurring of a background is more distracting to me, because inevitably you move and then your head looks weird, and now all I'm thinking about is how you have an odd-shaped head, right? And I know I'm not the only person doing that, right? So if you don't want to blur your background, try and take your computer or move to a space where you can have a background that doesn't distract. Watch for sounds, remove outside noise. I have been interviewing people and they can't help it because they live in a noisy neighborhood and the fire trucks are going by left and right, and they hear it and they get flustered, and I hear it, and now I'm just thinking about, oh, that poor person they're responding to, I hope they're gonna be okay. And I didn't hear anything you just said in your interview, right? See how easy it is to get distracted? Keep that distraction to a minimum. Move yourself to a spot. Go to a quiet room. Put yourself in the closet if you have to, right? Do anything you can to keep the distractions off and away. Turn your tech off. Don't leave your phone on, because inevitably that's going to be the time when your boys decide to text the group chat, and it's going to go off 45 times while you're in the middle of that interview, right? So turn it off. Turn it off. You can get the group chat after, and be in that quiet space. Use a computer and not a phone. I am not kidding you. I had an interview with someone, and I get it. He was busy, but he interviewed us the whole time holding his phone like this. And by the end of the interview, I was going to throw up. Please don't do that. If you have to use your phone because you have nothing else, I understand that. Try and put it down or on a stand and look to the camera. Don't look at yourself. Because inevitably, right, your camera is here, you're looking in the middle, and that looks weird. Because now I can see your eyes over here. While you're talking, you're like this, or you're like this, or you're like this. It's weird. It's super, super weird, right? So she says practice, practice. See yourself. See what you look like, right? See how distracting that may be, okay? When given a link, show up early. This is the other thing that completely flusters people. I show up 2 seconds before my interview and my link isn't working, my Wi-Fi isn't working, I can't get in, and now I'm 5 minutes late, and you know what? Most of the time, I can't give you any more time. So those 30 minutes for 10 questions that I had is now 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And now you're even more flustered because now I got to talk even faster and try and get to the end of the interview and tell you everything about me. And now all you've done is made me anxious, right? I don't want to interview this person. They're a little wound up. And it was because you didn't check in early enough to check your tech. So inevitably, when you get in there early, we're going to put you in a separate room. You're going to be able to check your tech. Get there, check your tech, and then show up as you would for an in-person interview. Now, obviously, I'm going to see this much of you. So this much of you should look fantastic. Whatever fantastic looks like for you, right? I'm not telling you have to wear a suit. I'm not telling you have to wear a dress. But remember, this is going to sell you. And so how do you want to sell you, right? You can be in robes and pajamas down here. I don't see this, as long as you don't stand up in the middle of your interview, right? You can do whatever you want down here, but up here, think about what is selling me. I kid you not. I have had people show up with jewelry that is very descriptive. And they didn't realize that their jewelry was so descriptive, right? I can see that. Think about that. Is that how you want to sell yourself? Maybe it is. Maybe that's how the person wanted their pot leaf earrings to be shown. I don't know, right? but think about it, okay? Next. Here's the fun part. We're going to skip recruiters. We're going to talk about interviews because we've got about 5 minutes left. So, take a deep breath, because at your individual little tables for the next 3 minutes, one of you is going to be the interviewer, one of you is going to be the interviewee, and one of you is going to watch and give feedback. If there are only 2 of you, you will give feedback if you are the interviewer. Got it? You can pick any of these questions. Any questions on what we're about to do? Got it? 2 minutes, go. All right. All right, let's wrap it up. Okay. I know that was short. I hope that was just a sampling for you of what practicing an interview can start to look and feel like. I don't know if you got all the way through even asking all the question and answering the question and then getting the feedback, but the point of this exercise is to, 1, see some examples of some questions, 2, practice the answer to that question, and then 3, start to hear somebody else tell you, like, that was a great job, you nailed that. Or, especially if the person who's listening knows you, like, dude, that was fabulous, but you didn't say nothing about the gym that we were at last week and the program that we operated, right? Because we forget those kind of things. We get so nervous, we get focused on the one part of the question, we start to say something, and then afterwards we go, oh, God, I didn't tell them anything about the fact that I'm a lifeguard and it's an aquatics job. How did I forget that, right? Like, this is why practicing is so crucial. You get to give an answer, somebody gets to hear your feedback, and then especially somebody who knows you gets to tell you that was great, or next time, don't forget this too, right? So you should be doing this, practicing every single time before you go out for an interview. More questions, everybody should go to cprs.org, and then in the search bar put in interview questions. I'm not kidding you, whatever job you are looking for, specialist, coordinator, supervisor, manager, director, there are a plethora of examples of questions. I went for a director interview for the city of Hercules probably 10 years ago. And I'd never interviewed for a director position ever before in my life. I was nervous. I went to CPRS. I put in interview questions for a director. Bam, 10 questions. I practiced them. I nailed them. I sat down in the interview. No joke, they asked me the exact same questions and the exact same answer. I nailed that interview. Nailed it. They offered me the job. I turned it down. Not a great move, but because I would have been a director already. But job just wasn't right for me, right? So before I go on to what's right and the fit, don't forget to go to CPRS and search. So what can you learn from jobs that you don't get? Fit. I'm going to jump to this one first since I just said it. So I didn't take the Hercules job because, 1, I lived in Livermore and the job was in Hercules, and I realized I'm not great at commuting. No, you don't want to be in traffic with Michelle. I'm not a nice person, not a nice person, and I couldn't do that every day, right? I also have a child, and at that point he was a lot younger, and that just wasn't going to work for me. These are things that I should have thought about before I even applied for a job in Hercules, but I didn't, right? So when I walked out the door, I started to really think about these things, and I said, this is not a good fit for me. I do not want you working for me if it's not a good fit for me and if it's not a good fit for you. Don't take a job just because you need money. Take a job because it feels right. Take a job because it's the job you want, because it's the job that's going to get you the next job, right? So you have to listen to fit. You may walk out, like I said, I know I nailed that job interview, and I felt great, right? It felt like a fit, and then it didn't. That can totally happen. You may also walk out and go, please don't call me. That job sucks. I don't want that job. I was just talking to someone who works in another area yesterday, and she was telling me about somebody she interviewed that we didn't hire. We're gonna hire, but we found another candidate that was also fantastic and went that direction. But this first person started asking questions like, can you tell me about conflict in the workplace? Do people get along here? That's a great question. At that time, no, people were not getting along. We didn't say that when we responded back, but that's a great question to ask. I don't want to go work in a place where you three hate each other and I got to sit right next to you, right? I don't want that. So ask those kind of questions. Make sure that that fit feels right for you. At the same time, how did you answer the questions? I've certainly walked out of interviews and went, man, I don't even know the words that came out of my mouth when she asked me about budget. What the heck did I say? I totally bombed that, right? So then when you realize that, what can I do differently next time? I can practice. I can ask myself a myriad of budget questions and make sure I know how to answer them next time, right? Did I answer them well, or did they ask me something I couldn't answer? Wow, what do I do about that next time? Well, that was around project management. I've never managed any projects. So let me go ask my current job. Can you give me something around project management? I really want to learn more about project management. So then next time when I go to interview, I can at least say, well, in my current job, I'm project managing X, Y, and Z, right? I'm starting to pick up experience because I couldn't answer that before, now I can, right? And then last but not least, like I've said, I keep saying practice, practice, practice. I don't always recommend this, but practicing with friends is fantastic. Practicing like we did here, fantastic. But what's even better is applying for another job, going through that interview process, and interviewing there, because that's a real situation, right? I have seen that there's a job that I want in another city. I really, really want that job. That's me. I want that. I want to nail that. Who else is hiring? Oh, here? And this job closes first, and this job's going to interview first. I'm going to apply there too, so that I can hopefully get an interview, so I can fill out the application and practice that, so I can read the job description and refine my skills on that, so I can get an interview and refine my skills on that, and then take all of that experience and work on this job that I really want and fill out the application there and refine my skills there, and then when I go interview, I nail it, and I get that job, right? So I don't always recommend applying for 52 other jobs and going through the interview process, but if there is a job that you know that you want and you get an opportunity to interview somewhere else first, take it, because that's the best practice in the world. Practice, practice, practice. Look up job questions, and then last but not least, if you like, take out your phone, copy that QR code, or screenshot, you know what I mean. Not the right terminology, but put your camera on that QR code. That will get you this presentation. It gets you all the information if you want it. You can have it. It's yours. We're 5 minutes over. I'm so sorry. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, TJ.
So a lot of the time, the interviewers ask, please share your weaknesses.
Yes.
How would you best answer that?
Yes. So that's a great question, because I definitely hear people say things like, well, one of my weaknesses is being a micromanager, because they think that being a micromanager is a bad thing. That's a good answer for a job where they don't want micromanagers, right? I'm a micromanager and it's a weakness, or I'm not a micromanager, that's how I should be saying. I'm not a micromanager, it's a weakness. Well, if they don't want a micromanager, that's a great answer, right? It's best to say things like, one of my weaknesses is that I tend to be overly helpful, right? Because that's not a bad thing. It is definitely something that in certain organizations, they're going to go, okay, that's great. I don't really need super helpful people, but it's not necessarily a weakness. Where I'm trying to go with this, and I'm struggling with finding the best answer, is taking a weakness that really isn't a weakness, right? Overly helpful really isn't a weakness. It's a good thing, right? If you can find examples of things that are good, but say that it's a weakness, it's not my strength, I'm not really great at that, but I do it anyway, you always want to turn it into a positive. I'm sorry, I'm not coming up with the best example right now for you, but that's what you're looking for in the gist of it, is anytime somebody's asking you something that may be a negative, if I call your boss, right, your boss from your last job, what are 3 things they're going to tell me about you that you need to work on? Well, she's probably going to tell you that I need to really focus on making sure that I don't stay after hours because I'm so into my job that sometimes I don't leave at 5 o'clock. I'm still working off the clock because I can't stop doing what I'm doing, right? I'm off the clock, I'm not getting paid for it, but I'm an overachiever, right? She's probably going to tell you that I need to stop doing that, right? Doesn't sound like a bad thing, isn't a bad thing, but for a boss, they may see it as a bad thing, right? So you're trying to give an example of what is, turning into a positive. Thank you, TJ. Any other questions? You guys don't have, I didn't keep you over from anything else? Okay, and library staff, I'm sorry if you need to get back to a desk. Okay. Yes.
Is it cool to apply for a job and interview if you know that it is not a job that you would take or want?
Sure. Totally cool. Absolutely cool. What's not cool is waiting until they offer you the job. So, like I said, I got the job in Hercules. They offered it to me. And it's not cool to wait that long because then I had to have the awkward conversation of, sorry, I don't really want this. And that doesn't look good for me because it looks like I'm indecisive. It also shows Hercules that they wasted a ton of time and money on me. And I guarantee I'm never getting hired in Hercules, right? Like, why put me out again, right? So it's okay to apply for a job, go through all of the process, and then pull yourself from the process before you ever get offered the job. That's okay. That happens a lot, actually. I get called all the time. Yeah, Michelle, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And I don't know if it's a lie or not, but what I usually am told is I was actually offered a position somewhere else, so I'm going to pull myself from this process. I just want to let you know. Thanks. My guess is 9 times out of 10 that's a lie, but it's the best way to pull yourself out of a process. You've already been hired somewhere else. I can't have you anyway, right? I've said the exact same thing when I'm just using the interview as a practice. That's totally okay. Just don't make a practice of it. You shouldn't be interviewing 12 times in practice, right? Especially in recreation, because it's very incestuous. We all talk, we all know each other. And like I said, there are people in this room who I have interviewed in other cities, right? Before they ever started working here, I interviewed them other places. And I guarantee, I'm burning all of your faces into my brain, I may interview all of you somewhere else. And if I'm sitting for the city of Brentwood and I interview you there, and then I go to Dublin and I interview you there, and then I go to San Ramon and I interview you there, eventually somebody's going to ask me, do you know that kid? Yep. Interviewed him 4 times now. And they're going to go, oh, why? I don't know. Can't get hired somewhere? Just likes to interview? I don't know, right? So we get to see you and know you, so don't make a practice of practicing. Okay? Anything else? Trust me, you may have questions later. It happens. If you've taken the PowerPoint and you're looking at it again and something comes up, the whole point of having the PowerPoint is because you have my email address. You also have my email address because I'm a city employee. You're a city employee, right? You can look me up. But do not hesitate to come talk to me. I definitely, the first time I did this presentation, I had people call me afterwards. I had people call me and say, can I practice interviewing with you? Yes, absolutely. I would love to help you practice an interview. I've also had people that I have worked with who 3 years later have called me and said, I don't know if you remember, you used to be my boss. Would you look at my resume? Yep, love to. You used to work for me. I remember you. I know what you did. I'd love to make sure your resume looks the way it should. So utilize me, utilize TJ, utilize Jack, right? They are your bosses. They will help you. And Daniel, thank you. I forget, he's not here. Thank you. And Daniel too, right? And library staff, utilize your bosses. Utilize Anya, right? Talk to them, ask them questions, practice with them, have them look at your resume. I always tell my boss when I'm looking for another job. I always do. One, because again, we're incestuous, she's gonna find out. Somebody's gonna call her, right? And two, because she's the best resource I have to remind me of how good I am as an employee. Can I practice with you? Yes. Did I answer these questions the right way? Well, you forgot 6 of the projects you've been working on. Oh man, thanks for reminding me of that, right? Utilize your coworkers, your staff, and your supervisors. Anything else? Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys and gals. Thank you.